Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with the Dispatchers Roundtable. And this is going to be round number 43. But first, as always, a word from our sponsor.
Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned. Oh, yeah. Welcome back. This is round number 43 of the Dispatchers Roundtable. And as you saw in the intro, the open mic piece was about to start, but we're not doing open mic. We're doing the Dispatchers Roundtable. And I've been working on the intro for the other one for a while, but life happens, okay? So I am excited to have or to be here with all of you, but also my guest with me today. We are going to be talking about the topic today is peer support, why it's needed, and why peers within are the best supporters. But as always, right off the bat, this live broadcast is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next gen core services. A big shout out to subscribers, all of you, especially all of you who are here watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Instagram. And I'm going to bring my guest up here. We were already laughing before we started. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to have her on. And my guest and panelist is Karla. She is a center manager at Chagrin Valley Dispatch in Brecksville, out of Ohio. Yo,
Hey, Ricardo.
how's it going?
It's great. It's a good day.
And you literally just got out of work, right?
I did. Yep, it was a 12-hour shift. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're gonna be here for just a little bit, so I'm happy to have you on. For everyone who is watching and listening right now, I was out about a week or so ago at Chagrin Valley, and I was taking a tour. I was recording episodes with folks, and I taught out there. And Karla was one of the people that I interviewed, and we were talking, and I had mentioned to her, the Dispatchers Roundtable, and if she ever had any topics to let me know, and like, bam, hooked me up with a topic, and I said, we need to do this. We need to do this soon because it's very fresh. And this was the topic actually that Karla sent in. So it was peer support, again, why it's needed and why peers within are the best supporters. Now, for those who are watching and listening, Karla, if you can give us just kind of an overview of you and your dispatch experience.
Yeah, I started dispatching full-time a little over 20 years ago. I started in a tiny little township, moved up to a one-chair suburb before going to a regional center where I'm at now. We dispatch for 33 cities in our county. My center handles 11.
Snaps.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's the
I
best kind
know.
of crazy.
Very busy. And when I was over there at the center where you're at, there was some good traffic going on. I was walking around, took some video and such for a highlight video for later, and we recorded a couple things as well that I might bring up here towards the end, but I want to jump in because we've got a lot to cover. And one of the first questions I want to ask you actually just right off the bat is why this topic? Why this topic? Where did it come from? Because I feel like when we were talking about it, and there was kind of some stuff that was building up to it, and I'm sure it was because of the episode that we recorded, but
Yeah.
you had the topic like I was almost done with the sentence, it seemed, and you had that topic already. I feel like you had been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely something that I think has changed the face of our field. It's something that in the beginning, I think we've all heard that line of "suck it up," move on. When you get emotional about something, I've had higher ups say, you're putting human emotion on monsters. You can't do that. You can't react that way. You need to just keep going. And I think for a lot of people in the field, we've been doing that for a long time. And everybody's kind of just ignoring the fact that this stuff really does impact us and this stuff really does stick with us.
Mhm.
So I think where I'm at now, our organization is trying to blaze trails in this idea of peer supporting. And of course, we've all been to a debrief also. Like in our career, we at some point have to end up at a debrief, and the debrief feels a lot like bashing dispatch or critiquing dispatch or what dispatch could have done differently that would have changed this call. And it's always been something negative. So to try to do something, anything to turn it around is something that I think not only our organization, but our state and our field in general everywhere could use.
Yeah, no, I agree, and so that brings me to the first question that I'm gonna end up putting into the comments for everyone, whether you are here on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, or over on this side on Instagram. And that first question, and I want to see what you think about this. And anybody who's watching and listening, please put your answer in the comments as well. So, why do you think peer support is non-negotiable in today's ECC?
I think it really boils down to one specific call that changed everything for me and changed the way that I view everything. And it wasn't even a call that I took. I was in the room. Um, the call specifically was a woman at the front desk of a hotel. She called and said that her 3-year-old son had been shot and was in the room. She didn't have a phone. We didn't know why she didn't have access to a phone in her room, but she had gone down to the lobby and made the call that her son was shot in the room. So the dispatcher, who is very near and dear to me, she's somebody that I've gone with, through other centers. So I've spent a lot of my career with her. She is an insanely good dispatcher. She's very experienced, she's very seasoned, and she took the call. And of course, because she has a toddler, that obviously is going to make her feel some type of way because she's taking a call of a toddler that's shot. So she's trying to get somebody to the room to render aid. Of course, we have police and fire en route. And when that call was done, we found out that the caller was the killer, that the person that called, the mother, is actually who had shot this baby multiple times. Now, of course, again, she feels that deeply in her soul as a mother. But and she's never said the words, but watching her in the days and the weeks following this call, she wasn't messed up because of the baby. And of course, it does hurt her because of the baby. But what messed her up is that she sent police officers into a room with a killer that had access to a gun and didn't know it.
Mhm.
So really, that is what took her. Like, that is what she felt, was I just sent policemen into that room not knowing and not, you know, preparing them that this person that I just sent them in there. So it wasn't, and again, she's never said that, but it was watching her in the days and the weeks afterwards of how she hung on to that and how that hurt her and how that impacted her. And nobody outside this field is going to understand that. And nobody outside of what we do is going to look at her or see her in the days and the weeks following that like we would.
Right. Yeah, and that is a perfect response for this question of why do you think peer support is non-negotiable in today's ECC? Because there are so many more things that are going on, and not just this. I think it was different even way before social media as well, because you were seeing it
Hmm.
locally, right? But it wasn't you didn't have access to so much information that you're getting hit with it over and over and over and over, and that's, the way it is now, and we are looking more at, um, the way it takes a toll,
Yep.
the way it is impacting folks, and I remember, I think it was either 2014 or 2015, there was a story that I remember I was recording with someone in, Boca Raton. I was at this conference called the Mini C, and, there was someone there who was telling me a story about they they had a call that was holding, and they gave it to this officer, and he was getting ready to go to lunch, and it tore her up because she was kind of blaming herself. There was another call that ends up coming in, and I believe it was a head-on collision, and it ended up being that officer that she had told to go to that other one, and I just remember her saying, "I felt like if I hadn't sent him, he wouldn't have been in that spot for that accident to happen, and he
Yeah.
might still be alive." And I don't remember exactly if there was any peer support that, helped her out, but she was sharing that story, and that's just, another one there of, yeah, this is why peer support is needed, because you start taking that blame.
Yeah. Yeah, and you carry that around with you. And if we're going to expect to do 30 years in this field, I mean, there has to be some kind of answer to that. We can't do 30 years without some kind of support. And that's from within, from higher ups, from each other. I mean, this is not, in my opinion, a field that you can do that long term and carry that weight around by yourself.
Mhm. Now, here in the comments, I just want to read really quick. Amy, hello, how's it going? Amy in the comments says, to the answer to this question, the toll of the job weighs heavy enough. We need a way to help us process what we hear in a way that is supportive and helpful. It also can help get closure that is so often not given to us. And I love that. Oh,
Mhm.
Hank says you can drive yourself crazy with what ifs. Yes, no, you're right. And hello, Hank, how's it going, man? Yeah, no, you're definitely right, and I love that she mentions the closure piece in here as well in comparison to peer support, because even if for some reason you don't find out fully what it is that happened, that peer support or talking to someone about these things that are going on or what you're dealing with is a form of healing and closure as well. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that that's what we get from each other. And I think that's one of the things that I think is so important about peers being on the inside because we know exactly, like, I knew exactly how she felt, even if I wasn't in that room with her. And I can relate to her and understand her in a way that maybe somebody else couldn't. And
Mhm.
she might not talk to me about it. She might not feel open enough to say, like, I feel like I screwed up or I'm carrying this guilt around with me. Like, she might not have the courage in those moments to say that to me. But if there's some avenue, some outlet, I think that it almost it's a requirement. It's like being able to have leads access or being able to use a CAD. Like, it's something that we need to have access to.
Right. Yeah. No, I fully agree. Now, so from there, as we're talking about this, is kind of a good segue into this next question. I want to post this as well here, but it is: have you ever felt supported or left hanging by a coworker or partner during a tough moment at work? But also, what kind of made the difference?
One thing that comes to mind, and I don't want to keep going back to like calls, but
Mhm.
one thing that comes to mind is I took a call of a woman that was witness to a double homicide. It was two motorcycle gangs. My team ended up winning double gold award for this particular call. And I am sitting next to one of my best friends on the entire planet, and her husband and her brother are responding to this call. So I definitely carry that around with me because um, I'm like, did I get in good enough information? Did I keep them safe enough? Did I get what I needed to give them? And I beat myself up over that call. Still to this day, I beat myself up over that call because I didn't know what I was getting. Of course you don't. But I'm sitting next to somebody that her family, her brother and her husband are going to that call. So in the moments that I felt like I could have been left hanging, and in any other scenario in my career, looking back, I probably would have been left hanging. But because she was sitting right next to me, she ended up being my support person. She ended up being my go-to person. But I think we all have that in our career where we can look back, especially agencies that are single chair or agencies that have captains or lieutenants over them and not necessarily dispatchers, where it's like you might say like, hey, like I'm having a hard time with that, like I need to get up and walk away, like, hey, do you think I could have done anything differently, and maybe get constructive criticism rather than that bashing feeling. Is I think that we all could feel, even if you are a trainee, you could feel like you've been left hanging. I think we all have stories like that. And I think that's the stuff that we carry around with us. And I
Mhm.
think that's what makes us a little bit hesitant to ask for help or to want to let those thoughts and feelings out because we've been left hanging so many times.
Yeah, and I think being left hanging like that or, any other scenario, there's maybe a little fear, like,
Yeah.
Are they gonna judge me?" You know? And
Yeah.
I think we all have that a little bit, and, it's good to have conversations like this so that we can move forward and hopefully not feel as afraid, you know? And I want to look here in the comments really quick. Candace here says, I think you always second guess yourself as a dispatcher, even if you did everything you possibly could. And Amy says, sometimes it helps to know we did enough. The guilt and what ifs, like Hank said, could drive you down a rabbit hole.
Hmm. Yeah, but it's like, how do you get better from that? Like, how do you stop what ifing yourself? And like I say that to trainees too, like when they start to do that to themselves, and I can see them doing it to themselves, is like, if you didn't do that, then to me, that feels like it doesn't mean something to you. You what if it because it means so much to you that you want it to be right, you want it to be the best, you want to get everything that you possibly can, because if you don't what if it, then you're like, "Oh, it's fine, moving on." Like, but what ifing it is like that priority of that's so important to me that I need to see it from every angle. I need to know what I did wrong. I need to know what I could have done better.
It's
And I think yeah, it does.
Oh, Candace says, "You never stop what if," and I think also as seasoned dispatchers, we're still learning every day. Yeah, no, you're right. Like, we are all learning something every single day. If you ever get to a point where you feel like you've learned everything, you need to probably need to learn more.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, that happens, and it kind of piggybacking a little bit off of what you just said there as well. I remember, like, towards the end of, my career, it was, like, the last week and a half, and, I felt like if 911 was a gang, I was getting beat out, like, I was getting shit call after shit call, and I remember this one where I needed to prove to myself that I had done everything that I could. There wasn't anybody I could reach out to at the moment. My team also was like, "Dude, you did everything, like, you did it all." So, but it had to do with a person who had called in for a, disorderly, but at the end, they said, "Also the person suicidal." I'm like, "Okay, well, that changes everything." And, I've got the person's phone number. I'm trying to get a hold of them to see where they're at, get a phone call that someone just witnessed a car going into a tree, and ultimately, it ended up being the person that I was trying to get to. And I took time. Luckily, there was enough of us there that I took about 25, 30 minutes mapping out how far the person could have gone from the house, my questioning, like, that's how much it I was what ifing. That's how much it was screwing me up, and I just needed to, 1, figure that out on my own, but 2, for my team around me to be like, "It's okay." And even if it was even just that little bit, "It's
Yeah.
okay. You did everything you could." Like, even right now, I can take a deep breath and be like, "I did." But sometimes we need that.
Mhm.
But in some places, people aren't getting that.
Yeah. And it seems more so than not. It really does, and meeting people from other agencies that maybe haven't started something like this, or meeting people, in the field that have absolutely no access whatsoever is sometimes all you need is that validation. Like, sometimes you just need, like you said, that somebody, like, sitting next to you that heard that call or took the call that you put the narrative into and put it on the radio. Like, sometimes it doesn't need to be this like sit down conversation of like, "Hey, are you feeling okay?" Sometimes the best peer support comes from like the conversations with each other and validating each other and listening to each other and just being a soundboard. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sit down formal thing.
Mhm. You're kind you're kind of with what you're saying, you kind of answered this next question already, but I'm gonna put it out there for the audience. But the question is, how can peer support make or break your day? And I mean, I kind of answered it a little bit as well with just needing that little bit, but I'll ask it again. How can peer support make or break your day, especially in your shift? What are your thoughts?
Like, isn't it interesting though, that every single one of us has something like that. Like, we're not unique. Like, every single
Right.
one of us has that. Like, even the trainee, the trainee who on her first day, like, she's feeling that about not knowing her login information, and she's feeling that, about being on the radio for the first time or hearing her voice for the first time. Like, in my experience, it just doesn't have to be something like earth shattering. It doesn't have to be that mom that shot her own child. It doesn't have to be that double homicide that was witnessed by somebody at the gas station. Like, it could be just something so simple and mundane. It could be, just the pressure of having 8 warrants that you have to enter on your desk while everybody else around you feels like maybe their channel isn't as busy as yours.
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't have to be like this world moving stuff. And of course, those are the calls that wake us up in the middle of the night, and those are the calls that are going to stick with us to retirement and probably long after that. But it doesn't have to be something crazy and big.
Right. And along with that question, I do have part of what I have as well is the community. So if you're part of the community as well, I posted this in there, and we've got some responses. So for that question specifically,
Mhm.
um Amy, actually, who's also in here, she had written some stuff over here, so I just want to read it really quick. But it says, "Peer support is not just during or after a bad incident or day." Basically, how you said it already. It is a check-in to see how you are doing. Someone willing to sit without saying anything, but knowing you can talk if you wanted to. And I think that's probably some of the best peer support as well, because there was a time when we had an officer that passed away out of nowhere, a sergeant, and I remember that happened on a Friday. I was coming in with my team on Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. I got there, and when I got there, there wasn't really anything going on. And I went to the supervisor that was there at the time, and I went to relieve him, and I said, "So, how'd the night go?" And he goes, "Are are you serious right now?" And I said, "Yeah, I am serious. Like, why wouldn't I be? What happened?" And he said, "Well," and he gave the name and said, "Passed away last night." And I said, "Uh, why don't joke like that. Like, that's not cool. I was supposed to see him this morning. He was we were gonna have coffee this morning like we usually do on Saturdays." And he's like, "Yeah, he passed away. Someone was supposed to call you to prepare you for your team coming in." And I thought, "Wow, that what the hell?" And, so then I've got, my team coming in, someone already knew, one of my team members already knew, but the other one didn't, and I had to take her to the side and say, "This happened last night." And we were all very close with this, specific sergeant, and, we had someone come in, and he came in from a, center that was north of us, and when he came in, we were working like a well-oiled machine. And we knew he was coming in, but he was also someone who comes from where we come from. And he just kind of walked around, observed, and was like, "How's the shift going?" It was like, "Well, it's going." And it was just a few words. He just let us do our thing, talk to us for a little bit, and just that alone, like that was
Mhm.
enough. It wasn't him taking us each in, one by one. It was like he was reading the room, and he did well. And just that little bit helped out a lot.
Yeah, I think it's the like you said, the validation. I think being able to like listen and put information to people in a way that feels like normal business, because a lot of us, if we get called out, that's where the embarrassment comes from. That's where the like, why would you put me on the spot like that comes from. But we see it happen to people that we are next to all the time. I mean, there's dispatchers that their edge or what makes them extraordinary is their sixth sense,
Mm,
and there'll be that one responder on whatever platform, whether it's police or fire or what have you, that will ask a bunch of follow-up questions and make the dispatcher feel like maybe she didn't do a good job in her call taking, or she didn't do a good job with the information, and that questioning is now making her question her own sixth sense.
mm.
And you can watch that happen over time,
Yes.
where this dispatcher says something, like, hey, we got a 911 hang up call, I heard this and this in the background, and then the response from the other end of the radio might be something negative or feel pointed, and then she goes, oh crap, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or crap, did I just waste resources going to this house when everything was just fine? And then you see them starting to second guess, and the more they second guess, the more they lose that edge of their sixth sense, which is what makes them extraordinary. So I think that stuff like noticing that kind of a thing is enough to say, girl, you did a great job on that. Like, he needs more questions. We can just call him back. Like
Mhm.
something just to validate, like, you did do a good job.
Right.
Like, you did do the right thing. You did ask the right questions, because we know what those are.
Yes.
They don't necessarily know what we could get. So I think the validation or the, whoa, sorry,
For a minute
the
there,
validation or the sound.
I thought you done fell out, man.
Of course, it had to be something, right? But I think that, I mean, I almost cartwheeled to save the phone,
I mean,
but
I could tell. That's why I was wondering if you had fallen. I was gonna get a hold of one of your coworkers and be like, "You need to send someone out. Welfare check,"
send her
something
a
like
pair.
that. Well, so going along with that, the next question is so like what stops you, or what do you think stops anyone from asking or offering support from their partners? Like, because as you were kind of talking there, sometimes people might be, I don't know, I guess kind of either talked down to, or like you said, made to feel that they didn't do, or they didn't have the right questioning or whichever. And I can see where, that would maybe stop someone from,
Yeah,
asking for some sort of help or some sort of validation, or do you think I did all I could do? Or maybe somebody else who got treated a certain way and was like, well, I'm not gonna offer it, which then sucks because then it just that cycle ends up going, and then you're like, damn it, like how do we get out of this? So I mean, is it that? Is it really the fear of judgment?
Yeah, I think that that's a huge fear. I think that also we are so critical of ourselves in this line of work. And if you're successful in this field, you are your own worst critic. Like, you don't need somebody to critique you. You are already critiquing yourself. And again, that's not something unique to me or to you or to the girl that sits to the left of me. Like, that's not unique. I have
Mhm.
found that we all do that to ourselves. So I think that the fear of judgment, maybe the fear of the answer. I mean, really, the fear of the answer. Like, hey, I didn't get that. I didn't get the color on that vehicle, but I got the make and the model. Like, was there no space to ask that? You know what I mean? Like, did the caller hang up on you? There's be a thousand reasons why. So I think that sometimes you're just afraid of somebody critiquing you, especially somebody that is your equal or above you. And I think that when it comes to peer support, it's really, really hard to ask somebody that outranks you. And a lot of the people that are of higher rank have the higher education. So because when you move up, you get more schooling and you just automatically end up getting access to things that you didn't when you were, dispatching on the floor. You end up being the person that has credentials that could help. And that is not where people want to go. You don't want to necessarily go to your boss or the boss above the boss. So I think that fear of criticism, fear of judgment, guilt, I think that's what stops most of us.
Mhm.
And we don't
I
want to be a liability. Like, we don't want to be seen as liability.
True. Yeah. No, yeah, that's a big thing. And yeah, a lot of people, myself including in the beginning, I didn't always talk about a lot of the stuff because I was the same way. I thought, well, if I'm asking for help or talking about certain things, or I guess just trying to feel a little more comfortable as I was getting dialed in, to everything as well. What if they end up
Mhm.
saying, well, I don't know that this is going to work out for Ricardo. I don't think he can hack it. And funny enough, I had a dream that I was in dispatch last night. I had a dream that I was back in dispatch. The center was awesome. I've never seen it before, but it was awesome, and apparently I had worked there before, and, so maybe this was some other life or something, I don't know, but I was in there and I was nervous, but there were people who were welcoming me back. They're like, "Welcome back, for coming back into dispatch. We really needed your help." And I'm like, "Alright," and I'm doing everything, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, "I've never been here before, but I know everything." I don't know, it was weird, but the reason I mention it too is because the people that were around me that I don't know either. Like, I can see all their faces right now, but, yes, Amy, different timeline. Yeah, for sure, it's a different timeline, but all those people were like, "Everything's good, like, you're okay. You're like, you're gonna make it." And I'm like, "Alright, cool." So, and that's like I said, that's the only reason I mention it because we're talking about peer support, and, like, even in my dream, I was getting some form of peer support, and it made me feel good. So, that's why I
Yeah.
kind of bring that up a little bit, but, that answers the other question, like, what is the trickiest part about building a culture where partners naturally support each other? Like, what do you think that is? What is the trickiest part to building a culture where partners naturally support each other? Because it's not like that in a lot of places. Some of them do have that, and, but there are some places that I've been to where I've spoken to, or I've had folks in class where they're like, "Yeah, it's not really something that is done," or mostly it was them, it was the center that they were at before they moved to where they were currently at. They left to go to a place where they did feel welcomed, where they did have a culture of wanting to support each other, and that's part of why they left from, like, the other place. So, I wanna put this in the comments as well, but again, what would you say is the trickiest part about building a culture where partners naturally support each other?
Yeah, I think it has to first and foremost come from the top down. Um, if the people above you are supportive and are trying to incorporate the acceptance of peer support, the acknowledgement of peer support, I think that that first will be the baseline. So if your boss is somebody that supports it, whose boss supports it, whose boss's boss supports it, then you have a better shot. I think the other thing is being able to see success. So when you are trying to do something and start something new and might be a little like mushy gushy, which we are generally not personality wise, mushy gushy people.
Right.
But once you see a success, and once you see it work, and once you see a positive impact happening, and then others start seeing that, then they're like, okay, well, maybe we can get on board with this.
Right.
And I think that culture isn't necessarily like completely geared towards peer support, but it's trying to get everybody in the center involved, get
Mhm.
everybody in the center to like learn each other, know each other, find something out about each other, a fun fact about each other, little team building stuff, little challenges or competitions within the center just starts to breed more acceptance into leaning on each other outside of work activities. Like all of those things plays a huge part in opening the door and having access to something like a successful peer support.
So let me ask you a question then, and of course for everyone who's listening as well. How does the peer support team and everything work where you are at?
So we have three different centers.
Hmm.
Um, and each center has their own members of peer support. My organization divided it in a way that there are dispatchers, there are supervisors, and there are administration that are trained to be peer supports. So we are sent to the classes, we get the credentials, we go to the schooling, we keep up with it. But we found first and foremost that supporting within on big events wasn't as successful as somebody from, let's say, our most northern center sending somebody down to one of the southern centers that had something impactful happen. Because sometimes that door has to be opened to somebody that's in your field that you can trust, that's within your organization, but not necessarily in the seat next to you. So sometimes that's the answer, but sometimes it's the complete opposite. Like, what is she doing here? Why is she here? Like, this is ours. We're insulated. Like, this is our incident. Only the people around me are going to understand that. So I think it's a lot of trial and error, number one. We also have therapy canines in each of our centers, which we are so lucky to have. And that's like unheard of to have it at like every single center, including our administrative buildings, where we have therapy dogs. So if you don't want to talk to a person, which a lot of us don't, then you have the dog. And a lot of us are super, super crazy animal people.
Hmm.
So sometimes it's just like walking into the kitchen to make your lunch and sitting down and snuggling the dog for a minute. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes, just an unspoken thing or a connection with an animal, or even the antics of an animal in a dispatch center, like sometimes that's what's lightening the mood, So I think what we're doing is something that is blazing the trails of what can be done and the success that we've seen in the unwritten part of it. We don't necessarily have this list of events that peer support have helped with, but even outside of our agency, when you see somebody show up with a cute puppy, like it's kind of hard to take the serious. I mean, it is, So I think just lightening the feeling in the room. I think just bringing an upbeatness to the center in general is more peer support than the written sit down parts of it. So that's the way we do it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're kind of trial and erroring it, we're kind of trying to spread it out. We're trying to get engaged with other centers. We're trying to offer access to sister agencies and those close to us, just to be able to hang out with our animals, hang out with our handlers, and just listening to each other and just doing stuff to like get to know each other. And that in itself feels like support.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, and I know, a lot of folks who wanna be around around the puppies and the dogs that you
Yeah,
have because of, classes that I've taught in Ohio, and everyone's like, "They've got puppies."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So for you specifically though, and I might have missed this or whichever, and I apologize if I did, but are you on the team as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so here's a question then. Do you what was your motivation for joining and wanting to push this? Because just listening to you talk and everybody else who can see you and hear you talking, like you are very passionate about this. So I'm just curious as to like
Yeah.
what really pushed you to really get into this.
It's gonna sound like something negative, and it wasn't something negative. But very, very early on in my career, there was a young man who had returned from the Marines, and he was on a motorcycle ride with his friend. He ended up wrecking his bike, and passing away. um, I was in the room when they were going through his belongings and they were inventorying it. And as they were saying what each item was, I was recording it. So in the early 2000s, in a very small township, dispatch was not what it is today. And you got used for whatever they needed you for. If you needed to file something, you filed something. If you needed to go pick up the water for the office, then that's what you did. Like you kind of got used for everything. And there was something that happened in that room where they opened up his wallet. And in his wallet was a tiny little piece of paper that was, I don't know, maybe 2 inches by 2 inches. And it was a love letter, and the paper had been folded so many times that the edges were soft like fabric, like it wasn't paper anymore, it was like soft by like fabric. And I just pictured that young man opening up that note so many times and reading that love letter so many times and then folding it up so many times and putting it back into his wallet that it had gotten worn. And whoever wrote that letter to him, all I could think about was how shattered her heart must be, and does she know? And like, how is her life going to be different? And I thought about him and the moments that he was deployed and he had just come home from Afghanistan, and that was probably what propelled him. That was probably what pushed him to get through his deployment. So that was within the first 2 years of my career. And I was sent home. And I understand why I was sent home, because I lost it. I lost it. I broke down into tears. And it's something to this day that I still think about, and is still like, I can feel the pressure of that. And I was sent home because I was feeling too much. And I wasn't able to continue doing my work.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why I was sent home, and I thought that's so wrong. Like that's so wrong. Um, and that doesn't feel like the right thing to do. I understand now, 20 years later. I understand why it was important to callous me, and why it was important to put a scab on that, because I would have never been successful in this career had I not learned how to pack some things, certainly deal with it, and not let it haunt you. But if I didn't learn very early on, and if I wasn't sent home, perhaps I would have been too empathetic or too compassionate to find success in a career that deals with that day after day after day after day after day. So after that moment, and after feeling that, and after the residue of that staying with me for 20 years, it became so important to me that somebody in this field would never feel that. And if they did, they shouldn't feel it by themselves. And if they needed to talk about it 25 times in a day, then they needed to talk about it 25 times a day. And if I'm the compassion and I'm the empathy, and that gives them the strength to be able to compartmentalize that when they're on the phone until they get off and they know that they can bring that to me, or they can just rest their head on my shoulder, or they just need a moment, or they just need to breathe, then I want to be that answer, because I don't ever want somebody to feel like that ever, or feel alone in that.
And your story and your experience is that inspiration for others. I
Yeah,
I love that. And I think
I
that,
need to be.
yeah, that's the, as we were kind of talking as well, that's the cycle that we want to continue going and growing. And I just want to read here really quick this quote, or the comment from Amy talking about you. Her passion, ideas, and approach are is inspiring. So there you go.
Yay,
That's
Amy.
that's that's you right there. So I have a couple questions, but I want to ask this one because we were kind of talking about this when I was over there with all of you, and this has kind of come up a lot um, lately, in a way. So we talk about peer support, and how important it is and everything for those who are in right now. But I just want to throw this out there for anybody who's watching and listening, and of course for you as well, Carla. I want to know what your thought is. What about peer support for dispatchers who have retired out? Because there are dispatchers who have retired out that are, some of them are out there struggling, and they have that imposter syndrome. And it's because and in some places, they, or some folks, they think of this as like blood in, blood out, like once you're gone, but that's not how it should be. That's not the way it is. And there are folks out there who feel like they can't reach out to their 911 families or the people that they know because they aren't in it anymore, and now they're struggling, and they're trying to find some help, and maybe they're, going around to find a therapist, which is good. But as we have been talking, and we keep going back to, and the topic, the title in there, that the best support comes from those within, those that we work with. So, what about peer support for dispatchers who have retired out or have left and are struggling? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, how can we do something to help those folks?
I think staying connected to the field is important, whether you're in or you're out. And I think that social media and platforms like that, are a good way for them to feel like, they're still into it. They're still a part of it. They're still accepted by it. So I think social media is probably the number one thing that I would tell them to lean on. And a lot of us do stay friends. And there's a lot of people that have retired that I will not let them. I will not let them retire. You can not physically be in this building anymore, but you are still coming to the birthday parties, and you're still, coming to the other retirement parties. And, so I think staying connected, and maybe some of us in peer support, can get to, I don't want to say overachiever, but feel like it's your responsibility to like spread yourself out so thin, and reaching out to everybody from other centers to your own center to different shifts, to even people in retirement. But in my opinion, anybody underneath this headset, whether it was 1 year, 5 years, 35 years, you are still part of this family, and gold blood doesn't change. You can walk away from it, but your blood's still gold. It's just, we're like that.
That's a t-shirt right there. Gold blood doesn't change. Like, well done, well said. And I'm gonna bring something up. I've not talked about this ever, actually. Thinking about it, this happened a few months ago, but and I had one of my daughters with me at the time. So, like a lot of people, I like a Starbucks every now and then. And I went, to pick one up, and, I was wearing, one of my I Am 911 shirts, and I rolled up, and I was paying, and the girl who was taking, my order and everything, or the money rather, she saw my shirt, and she goes, "You worked in 911?" And I started explaining and stuff. She's like, "Oh my gosh." She goes, "Yeah, I was a dispatcher as well. I worked for, just a few years, and then I left because I ended up getting PTSD and everything." We were talking for a little bit, and we had a line, but I was telling her, about, sharing and talking and everything else, and when I went back the next time, she was there, and I had, a lapel pin, an I Am 911 lapel pin, and I brought it on purpose, just hoping that I was gonna see her again, and that time, my daughter was with me, and I pulled up, and she's like, "Hi," and I said, "Hey, hey," and I said, "I have something for you." I said, "You mentioned what what you did before, and we had that conversation, and I said, 'This is for you.' I said, 'This is for your time that you were in, and you will always be gold.'" And we had a moment. So, it
Yeah,
was it was cool. It was you could tell on her face, it was like, maybe not that she fully needed that, or what, and maybe she did, I don't know. It was the vibe that I kinda got. It was just that continued recognition, even though she wasn't in dispatch anymore. And, as
yeah,
far as I know, she's still there at that Starbucks. I haven't gone in a few months, but, or in a month or so or something like that, but, it's it's stuff like that, being able to just, I guess, let people know that they're still recognized, and they still matter, I guess, is what I'm getting at too.
absolutely. And their contributions aren't wasted and their contributions aren't unrecognized, like tip your headset, because we see each other in a way that even the responders themselves don't see us. And only we could give each other that. So, like, instead of being competitive or seeing each other, as an enemy, or, things can get very political in public safety. And once we drop that and actually start looking at each other as the humans and for our contributions, I think that's ultimately what peer support is. And I think being under the pressure all the time of what we do, we forget that we spend more time with each other than we do our husbands, our wives, our children, our family members. Like, we are literally locked in a cement box with each other for sometimes 60, 70, even 80 hours a week. And we don't start seeing each other for who we are and appreciating each other. Nobody's going to do that for us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're the ones who know, like you said,
Right.
and it starts with us. Candace here says networking, keeping in touch, checking in on them, and, also I've been, occasionally would meet for dinner. And I don't live where I was dispatching, but there are times where I go up there, and I'll post a picture, and, on, Facebook or something, on social media, and say, "Hello, Allegan," and I'll get some text messages from my dispatch friends that are like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" So that's always fun, and even just that little bit, it's like, "Yep, we had that time," because I've talked to a few of them, and two of them that I'll just mention specifically, because I've said this directly to them, and it's my good friend Megan and Trista. And I told them, I said, I thank you both for a lot of things. Like, I thank everybody there that I worked with, but those two specifically, mostly because we were on the same team for so long. And I said, no one else will ever understand the shit that we went through. Just us. We were the
Yeah.
ones there for, this call, and this call, and we're the only ones who will ever understand what it was like when the shit was hitting the fan, and we were hoping and praying that everyone was gonna make it back alive.
Yeah. It's like a collection of tattoos. Like, once you have that, it doesn't go away.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Amy says, "Battle buddies of dispatch." Hey, there you go.
Yeah,
I dig
well,
that.
but it's exact.
Say that again?
Yeah, it's definitely battle buddies
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. We're soldiers, yeah.
Um, this next question, as we're kinda going into the wrap up of this as well. This has been a great conversation. This has been a great round. Um, so if you had to give, or if you had to think of like one standard or a rule for making peer support actually work, what would that be?
Mhm. I think the education is important, but I know that there's a lot of agencies that don't have access to either the education or the budget to be able to send people for the education. But I think you need that one person that lights the match that starts the inferno, that has that one, like, we need to have this change. If in your agency you have just that one person that's like, will stay 10 minutes after, or will clean off your car when it's snowing so that you can get home faster because you got babies, or
Right.
like that, there's that one person, and we all know who that person is. Like, every agency has that one person. And I think usually, in my experience, it's the person that has the most scars, that seems to be that person. So I think that if that person could be watered and sunshined, and kind of brought up, that one person is really all you need. Because once you start cultivating that one person, and once you start nurturing that one person, they're going to spread it around, and eventually it's going to catch on. There's always going to be those people that feel their emotions with like that crustiness, or that person that doesn't want to be messed with, or that person that always has, crunched up eyebrows. You like we also all have that one person, but there'll be a breakthrough sometime, there'll be a breakthrough.
Right.
But I think if you don't have access to a formal peer support, that it's not realistic for your agency to have support animals, or maybe it's not realistic for your agency to pay overtime or to pay for the classes for you guys to start it. And maybe it'll never be something formal, and maybe you'll never be able to pass it, through your council of governments or your trustees or your union. That making your own, or electing that one person to start blazing the trail and being a pioneer in your agency, you just need that one little spark. And if you have that person, then I would say first is the recognition of that person, and giving them the gumption, the bravery, the courage to start reaching out in a positive way to others, and recognizing and validating. And you just need one person, and it will eventually catch on.
Amy here says because that one person knows how it feels to be left with no support and wants to help the next person so that they are not alone.
Right. That's absolutely right. I mean, she hit the nail on the head, because it is that one person who doesn't ever want to feel like that, and doesn't want somebody else to feel like that ever again. And it's going to take that one time. It's going to take that one time for it to happen to one person, and it's going to change the face of the agency. I mean, it's at least going to change the way the employees function within it. So if that's the reality of it, then having a response to that is got to be the same reality, even if you do it yourself.
For sure. Now, if you, and this is for everyone who's watching and listening, but if you could design the perfect peer support program, what would it look like? And this could be anything off the wall if you want to as well. However you want to put it out there. I think a lot of people will have some different answers. Maybe not directly at this moment, but as people start watching the replay and everything, this will be something
Mhm.
that people will answer as well. But for you, if you could design your perfect peer support program, like what would it look like? What would be in there?
The band of the misfit toys. No, I think that finding at least volunteers at first is going to be the most important thing. I think education is going to be the second. Even if it's a webinar or something to understand the psychology or the what happens with the brain chemistry. Educating on what is PTSD, what does it look like, what does um quiet, there's a word for it, but like people that have suicidal ideations, or people that are struggling with addiction, those are usually responses to something in emotional trauma. So knowing how to recognize that and being able to see it is so important. And if it's your own research and your own education, then so be it, because a lot of us don't have access to those types of funds, or we don't have an administration like mine that believes in something like this. So I think educating is extremely important, even if it's self education or self research, or a deep dive into a webinar or some kind of free, if that's what it takes. So I think education would be the first and foremost to the ideal peer support team. I think having volunteers and it not be a forced assignment is going to be the second thing, because we all know how forced assignments go. So I think volunteers, and I think networking, and I think things like your podcast and within the trenches, and Facebook pages, and having access to other people that you can bounce ideas off of, or you can share inspiration with. So I think volunteers, education, and networking is probably going to be the top three to successful peer support. And if it means going outside of your agency to start measuring success, you need to be able to measure success for your peer support to be successful. Because if you don't feel the positives coming back from it, then it's going to slowly dwindle and the flame's going to go out. So if it means going outside of your agency, if it means getting on a Facebook Live, if it means sharing something on TikTok, however you need to keep pushing for that success in peer support in whatever way it comes to you in its own unique way, having the success in your first 6 months to a year of starting it is vital to giving you the fuel to keep going and doing it.
Damn. Well done. Like I could not have said it any better myself. And for those watching and listening, I'm sure they might be trying to reach out to you because you are obviously well versed. And again, you're just so passionate about it, and your thoughts on everything on this subject. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. This has been an
Yeah.
awesome round, and just the engagement and everything. It has been excellent, and people are going to be watching this all over. So this has been awesome. Um, again, I've had a lot of fun with you. A lot of the resources, just right off the top of my head. I mean, you've got all the major organizations, right? They have their own parts that go along with mental health and wellness. And you said you've been doing this for about 20 years, right? Again?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so about the same as myself, being in public safety for 20 years. So a quick question before we go off of this round here. What do you think about how peer support was in the very beginning to how it is now? Because there's definitely more resources. People are talking about it way more, which is amazing, but just the changes from the beginning to now.
Yeah, I mean, it's two different planets. I mean, it's not even in the same atmosphere. I mean, it's two totally different things, from being hardened in the beginning and it was a sign of weakness. Like it was, we were told that you weren't cut for this, that you couldn't continue in this field, and that if you didn't find a way to pack it down and not talk about it and keep it confidential, and we had an expression of airing dirty laundry. So, like, what happens in your agency stays in your agency, and if another agency knew about it, they might be able to blow holes in your investigation, or they might be able, so like there was no airing of dirty laundry. Like
Yeah.
you were super insulated, and sharing or talking about it was absolutely not a thing. Like you couldn't even bring it up. If you read the report more than one time, that was a big no-no. Like if you wanted to see the photographs of a call that you took when they were on Polaroids, like you weren't allowed to do that. Like you had to compartmentalize. And maybe there was a breed of dispatchers that found success in that, but I think that more so than not were people that couldn't. They're human, and they couldn't do that. They had to share. They had to be heard. They needed to bounce things off. They had to cleanse from the dirtiness of that. So I think it's two worlds of difference. And seeing people around me in agencies that are close to mine geographically, or close to mine in size, I wish that they had the support that my organization does when it comes to this, and just simply saying, we need something for this. And not throwing us a comfortable chair and saying, oh, well, we got you a comfortable chair, you'll be fine in here. Like being able to actually acknowledge it at all in any capacity was absolutely changing everything that we did, and changing the types of people that we were able to attract, and the new breed of dispatchers. I mean, in my organization alone, there's a group of us, the 40 somethings, and then there's a huge group of us, the 20 somethings, and there's like nothing in between. So I'm not saying that there's not people in their 30s in my organization. Of course there is, but the vast majority are the 40 somethings that are hitting their 20-year mark, and the 20 somethings that are just starting. And there's this huge gap that's missing. And from my perspective, looking up at the field in general down, that huge gap is because of things like peer support, or not being able to express emotions, or not being able, like, all of a sudden we couldn't get anybody to stay in this field, and we needed to do something different, and we needed to recruit or attract an entire generation of people that understood more so than us 40 somethings emotion, and healthy ways of letting it out, and having support in social media, and having access to people online that they could talk to things about. And once you start seeing that and actually acknowledging that it's a thing and not pretending that it doesn't exist, things start to become way more healthy. You start to have a better work-life balance. You start to get the passion that you need to not be the crusty 40 something year old lady in the corner who doesn't want to talk to anybody else,
Right.
like, so I think there's two totally different planets. There's the compartmentalized, which I'm sure is success for some people, and I'm sure that some people field things that way and it works for them, but the vast majority of us are not like that. So I think peer support is kind of like the bridge between the two things. And even if it's not a formal peer support, is actually saying this field can mess you up if you're not careful. But this field can also bring you such massive reward if you let it. So kind of being more open is the beginning of peer support. It's the little baby peer support.
I love that. Damn. That was a perfect way to wrap it up. Well done. That was awesome. And again, thank you for being on and for what you do and also for your passion on this topic as well. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to have been here. Thank you, Ricardo.
Of course. No, you're welcome. I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for everyone who has been on for this round, thank you for what you do in this profession. And this is just such an important topic. And I'm so happy that Carla was able to be on today. And for any of you who might have any comments, questions, or if you have any topics for future rounds of the Dispatchers Roundtable, you can simply go to the link that's there on the bottom, and that is links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with two eyes.co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything there: email, social media, where to hear the latest episode, all that good stuff. Also, the link to join the free community, which is the Trenches. And we are connecting on there, adding posts and all kinds of stuff. And this will be actually added to every single round that is on the community as well, for you to go back and watch as many times as you want and comment, connect with each other, and all that good stuff. So again, it's links with two eyes.co/WTT podcast, and you'll find everything there. This has been sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services. Shout out to subscribers. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn, X, and then there'll be clips on Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, and TikTok as well. So make sure to check that all out. And then for the flagship show Within the Trenches podcast, you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.